Learning. Only takes like 3 years, but I'm sure I learned.
I can put little duct tape marks on the ground or whatever.
There you go. I'm tempted to zip tie these things to the chair, the sides of these, because they're always up against it. Anyway, do you go through? Sorry. Always up against the side, right? So we can like zip tie here, so it won't. So the position here is always the same. So you can't really, I mean, you can move the thing over, but you can't really move where this is at.
Mm-hmm.
Want some too, bud? Yeah. We got a good one going there.
Yeah, it's super dry.
Mm-hmm.
It's like getting ready for blast off.
Mm-hmm.
There's like a lot of stuff that's got to be just right.
Yep. You can probably shut that door a bit now. There he goes. You don't need to leave that on there if it's okay. In fact, you probably don't want to because it'll get hot. There you go. What's up, Buttercup? Oh, Jesus. Hold on a second.
I got my new podcast uniform on.
Do you? Sorry, I thought my phone was ringing. You got a new character name? Is that what's going on?
What do you think does them better, me or Cam?
I don't know. You kind of seem more like the dude to me.
Yeah.
The dude, man. What's the rug? We really brought the room together.
I'm thinking about converting this long hair into a mullet.
Nice. You might want to open that door back up, maybe.
What do you think about that?
You think it's going to go?
I think it's going to be very suspenseful, and it will go.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll leave you to it.
Yeah, man, I'm thinking about going full mullet. What do you think about that? You'll have a hawk, I'll have a mullet.
If you don't mind being the more white trashy one as opposed to
more white trashy?
The degenerate one.
The more white trashy one?
Yeah, I look at a mullet and think of white trash. I look at a mohawk and think of degenerate.
There's very sophisticated hockey players that have mullets.
I don't know if you can call a hockey player sophisticated.
Very sophisticated.
In general. Ooh. Oh, he has to pull it open. Told you. Give it a little pull, son. They like that air. I'm sure there's a way to hook up something where you just pull the trigger and it forced air into a fireplace. Just got it going real good.
It's called a leaf blower.
Yeah, just like permanently, like you just
yeah.
pull a trigger and it's mounted to the side or something. That'd be cool.
Just grabbing.
You might just want to leave the... Oh, see, now you got that.
Well, what do you got for us today, Josh Jones?
Oh, did you leave
MFJJ,
it in my hands?
Podiumarcher.com.
Let's see. Well, I guess...
It's target bow season.
It is target bow season. I just got done testing out the new Super X's from PSE.
I shot that last night.
Yeah.
Just a couple times.
Yeah, just a couple times. They have 2 different axle-to-axles, 3 different cam assemblies, like PSE traditionally does. They just have a gamut of crap over 1 or 2, and it makes it a little more confusing on trying to determine which one to buy. I can say that they have an insane amount of forward movement, which is pretty standard for that type of platform where the limbs face forward, and what I mean by that is when you fire the bow wants to jump out of your hand.
I almost threw it down range.
Yeah. Kind of like bows did in the olden days. When I was young and started doing this, most stuff was faced that direction. So it's almost like you had to hang on to it because it was going to vibrate really hard because it was surging forward and you had to hold it. Now modern bows with the limbs real parallel, they don't do that anymore. But target guys, or a large percentage of target guys, really like that feel. They want the bow to surge out of their hand. They want to feel the response from it.
Is that feedback?
Feedback, yeah. Yeah, and so that if you're that guy, that's bow's going to be really good for you because I don't think I've shot a target bow that felt that much more jumpy out of my hand in a while. It definitely was a ton more surge than the title. The title had like none, so it's like just a different philosophy, I guess. What did I find interesting? The draw lengths were very accurate on the 37s, like within 16ths when you measured the physical draw length of what they said it was and what it came out to. But the 40s were short, like they were almost a half inch short of what they said they were in draw length, which there's really no logical reason for a manufacturer to do that on purpose because it's going to make your bow shoot slower. It's going to make it test slower. But that's just how they turned out. And in the same fashion that I had with PSC when I tested it last year, which I didn't test their target bows last year. I tested their hunting bows. They were, I think, an average of 14 foot slow or 15 foot slow last year on every bow I tested. Like it was almost to the foot on every one I tested were exactly the same level of slow. This year, and mind you, I'm staring at the numbers on my whiteboard at the moment. On the 37s, they were 15 feet slow, 20 feet slow, and 14 feet slow. Yeah, that looks about right. And on the 40s, there were 11 feet slow, 18 feet slow, and 13 feet slow. So, target bows aren't typically something someone really authentically cares about the speed. So it kind of baffles me why. I mean, they got to know they're being blatantly off, right, in that scenario. Why lie about it? It's a target bow. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand in my logic why in that scenario, because traditionally if a bow manufacturer is trying to fluff their speed, right, they'll set their draw length a little long, which is why we're adding draw length measurements this year so you can functionally know how long this bow is really at when it's being tested as opposed to what they're telling you. If you wanted that bow to really go faster, just fudge your draw length. I mean, if you're going to, be dishonest, how many people are actually going to measure the real draw length as opposed to test the bow through a chronograph for speed? Not nearly as many. Most people
They're not
are
going to measure it. They're just going to set it up for themselves, and it's going to feel right.
Yeah,
and they're going to shoot it.
So the majority of people would be less likely to know how off the speed is as opposed to the published speed. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Who feels the need to publish a target bow at 340? It's a target bow.
Maybe it's marketing. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know if it's.
Do you think Matthews is going to have the fastest target bow this year? Because that thing's pretty blazing, right?
It is, and I bet you they do.
Yeah.
I haven't tested the Darton we got in 2 days ago yet, but I will. And I'm trying to think of.
Let me ask you something about that Matthews title.
Sure.
It's fast.
It's fast.
For a target bow.
Yep.
Fast for a bow. Mm-hmm. Upper tier. I really like the cams, dude.
Yeah, it's the first time that they've incorporated the switch weight in a target bow, which is great and bad all at the same time. I mean, for guys wanting to shoot target, you have the option or the versatility to be able to change your peak weight by just putting a different module on it, and that's fantastic. It makes it easy for you to still run the bow at its optimum high limb level, that sort of thing, and yet not have to buy a new set of limbs because a new set of limbs usually is around $300 depending on which manufacturer. I haven't seen a price on those yet because they're new and they got rubber in the limb and all that. But the module system I think is like $60 or $70 for a mod, somewhere around there. The negative about it is I have to carry 180 modules to fit every option that you can possibly put that bow in for one each. That's kind of a nightmare. But it gives you an ultimate amount of versatility. And I've always thought that the switch weight style system was a little less efficient, i.e., you wouldn't get the speed that you would get from a non-switch weight system. But you look at what the target bow's doing; it's putting out a ridiculous amount of speed, and I'm willing to bet their hunting bows are probably faster this year if they incorporate some of those target bow things into them. I don't know yet because it's still a month away. But the speed is so good in it that I don't know if I can say that a switch weight system is less efficient.
The cam doesn't have that like aggressive rollover that a fast bow does.
No.
I didn't feel it anyway.
No, it's actually pretty smooth.
It was my favorite Matthews cam I've ever shot. Like within the first, I only got 10 or 15 arrows through it, but I was like, damn, this cam is different.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's got me kind of excited about what they got going.
It's a nice setup. It really is. Now, that being said, like we're talking about a Super X and you bring up the title and there's $700 difference between them.
Yeah.
Yeah, Super X is $13.99. So that's pretty big, pretty drastic price difference. We're stocking all of them now, and we're carrying all of them. You can buy them on the website and whatnot, or come in and try them out. And every cam configuration too. I mean, it is in right-handed 60 pounds. There's 6 different possible configurations you can have a PSE in that you have to buy individual ones. Whereas the beauty of that Matthews is I just have to buy the modules. I don't have to buy the bows. So all I got to do is buy every color you want. And so it allows me to carry everything they could possibly offer.
And there's some pretty fancy colors.
There is. They're really popping good. The PSE ones look good too, but Matthews took some unique color choices.
Are you still on track for shooting Vegas this next year?
Yeah, I'll shoot Vegas. Michael was just asking me, he's like, hey, registration to open today. Like, do I have to panic about that? Do I have to do it right now? Can I do it in a day or two?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'll go shoot Vegas. I'll probably shoot terrible. That's fine. I don't care.
What would terrible be for you, do you think? Because I never see you shoot indoor.
It's been a while. Indoor is a discipline that requires a lot of repetition. A lot of arrows being shot, and that means time consumption, and that's something I struggle to have any of. I will probably shoot 2 months before, and I'll try to shoot 3-4 days a week, and I'll probably try to shoot 60 to 90 arrows at a time, somewhere around there, which isn't enough, but it's probably about all I can fit in. To try to be good, and I'll be, I probably won't shoot 300s because it's been a long time, but I'll be in the 90s somewhere. If I'm not, I'll be shocked, but it doesn't mean I won't be. I don't know.
You will be.
We'll see. Well, you don't know. You don't know, man.
I know.
Like I've felt pains in my body that I haven't felt before, my neck and my shoulders and whatnot. I don't know how well my body's going to respond to a lot of arrows. So it might just simply be a issue of ability physically at this point. Because, I'm only 44. Yeah, I think 44. But the number of arrows that's on this 44 man's body is insane amounts.
How are your eyes doing?
My eyes are starting to fail me for the first time in my life. Like I've had exceptional vision my entire life.
It's one thing I noticed really good archers always have really good vision. Mm-hmm. And a lot of really good golfers too do as well. Mm-hmm. And then you hear both categories talk about as they age, their eyes, do what they do. They age.
Yeah, my downrange vision's phenomenal. It's just up close is starting to get to where I got to move things away just to get them to come into focus. Mm-hmm. And I've never had that before. So that was 6-8 months ago, I think, when I first noticed that all of a sudden I was starting to move stuff farther out to see it. Now it feels like I'm almost like out to here, where it was like here. So it's getting worse. I don't know if there's something you can do for that. Somebody make a supplement I can take to make that stop or whatever.
Well, they can do the LASIK thing, and LASIK can fix one direction. It can fix near or far. Mm. If you're fucked on both, you're only getting one better. But
gotcha. Shooting a laser into my eyeball, that's a little frightening.
It is frightening. Yeah. Is Bowtech going to do it?
What if that guy was up late that night just tearing it up and tearing up the town? He's hung over as hell, and he bumps the laser a little bit.
I know a guy. Is Bowtech going to do a new target bow?
You can probably close that door. I have not been. My rep does not know 100%, but I would be shocked.
When would it launch?
Same time the hunting bows do, probably. But I would be full on floored if they changed that bow.
November-ish?
That bow, yeah. Well, they just still haven't given me a date.
Bastards.
I need to check in. It's been probably 4 weeks since I checked in. They might have a date by now, but I'll be absolutely floored. They completely redesigned top to bottom everything they did in that bow. So I don't know. I wouldn't think a year later they would change it.
It's been a really successful platform too.
It's been the most successful selling platform, not shooter. Yes, there's some really good shooters shooting those bows, and they're doing well with them in tournament format, but in sales, they're doing phenomenal. Like they're selling a ton of those. I sold a ton of those, way more than I expected to.
On the target side?
Yeah, like a ton of them. I was shocked. Like when I say a ton, I mean, oh God, at least 60 of them, 70 of them.
Can people buy target bows through the website?
Yeah. Any of the target stuff. So I haven't gotten an official answer from Elite yet on whether or not they're going to let me do their target bows on my website, but Matthews is a yes, PSC is a yes, Darton's a yes, Bowtech's a yes. If it's target bow, I can sell it on my website. I have Hoyt's Olympic style recurves and target bows, which the Hoyt target line has remained unchanged other than some color things. The bows themselves are exactly the same. So those are in stock, available currently. I probably have 40 Hoyt target bows in the store. I probably have 40 or 50 Reckonings in the store. I just got 15 Super X's. I think I had 30 on order. And I still have some TRXs, the 34s, 36, 38s, and 40s. We marked them down to, I think, $1,300 to $1,350 or something like that from $1,850. So they're on clearance, and we sell one every other day or whatnot, and they'll be gone eventually. But we still have probably 20 of those. And when they're gone, they're gone. I'm not going to carry the 34 or the 40, even though they're not discontinuing it. It's still going to be in the line. I'm not going to stock it anymore. Mm-hmm. And then we're going to do, we will have the entire PSC line on the website on the target bow side. I just brought in Super X's first just because they were new, but we will have all of it.
What did you think about? Well, I guess you can tell the audience about what we did the other day, doing our little heavy arrow test. Not a heavy arrow test, an arrow test. 400 versus 600 versus 800
This comes out
grains.
Monday, right?
Yeah, they'll be able to go watch that video.
Yeah, so can we completely talk about it? Or do you want to leave some of it to where they got to go watch the video?
Well,
Tim would really appreciate it if you go watch the video because it is a very entertaining and moderately educational video. It was the arrow weight difference done right. The complaints that I'd heard in the past when people would do what's a 400 grain arrow do versus a 600 grain arrow do versus an 800 grain arrow do, right? One, in some instances, they just screw heavier tips on the front to change the weight, right? Well, that's not an accurate transfer of energy. You got to try to be around a similar spine arrow. So I made a couple arrows up. So we had relatively close stiffness, not super close weight in the front because you really can't. I mean, you're not going to find an 800 grain arrow and a 400 grain arrow. They're going to be the same spine, the same FOC.
As close as you reasonably can.
We did it as close as you can reasonably do it, I think, and had made a 400, a 600, an 800 grain arrow, and also paid attention to where the zero was at 20. So figured out the drop of he had to change his arrow from what he had. We put a lighter tip in it to try to get the right overall physical weight of a 400 grain arrow because his arrows were heavier than that. And then re-zero his bow to, I think it's 15 yards was where you had to start from on that one. Mm-hmm. And then on the 600 grain arrow, we went out to figure out where its zero was for 20 yards. And on his sight tape, that was like 30 yards. And the other one was like 40 yards.
Yeah, so for reference, I went from a 440 arrow. That was my hunting arrow. And I screwed on an 85 point tip, grain point tip.
And dropped the 40 off.
To be at an even 400. So my 20 equal is now up to 15 on the 400 grain arrow. Mm-hmm. It's down to 30 on the 600 grain arrow. And I was surprised at this. I didn't think your 20 would change that much, but it was down to 40 on the 800 grain arrow.
Yeah. So if you're going to test the difference between these things as far as drop is concerned, you have to at least start at where they would all three be hitting 20 yards. And so we figured out where his drop was it 60?
Yep, we went at 60, yeah.
Went out to 60, figured out how far the lighter arrow was going to drop, and marked that on his sight tape.
Re-zeroed. Yep.
Re-zeroed, so we had a fair starting point, and then went and set the sight at 30 yards for the 600 grain arrow and pointed on the target to see how far it was going to drop. Oh, no, measure the drop difference. Sorry. Yeah, I used a micrometer to measure the distance on the 400 grain arrow's drop from 20 to 60. Reset the sight at 30 yards and then measured the needle down to where that exact same drop would be, moved the sight down, shot the arrow at the target, and then did the same thing for 800 grains, which was 40 yards, used the micrometer difference, shot it again.
And a micrometer for somebody listening is basically...
It's a caliper. Actually...
It's got 2 points, yep.
Yep.
And you can measure to like the thousandth of an inch, right?
Correct.
And we set those 2 points from 20 to 60, And then we had that to work with.
Yeah, we commonly use them for setting up sight tapes because it's really easy to measure with because it's an exact and you can lock it down and hold it in place. So it's kind of hard to screw up.
It's accurate.
It's very accurate. And then went and shot and you can see the drop difference. Do we want to disclose how much the difference was or do you want to make them watch the video?
You can just say it's a lot.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
Like a lot. And we measured every tangible thing fairly that we could to come up with that.
And the interesting thing is that the feet per second wasn't changing equidistant.
Yeah,
right? And the speed test.
Yeah, when we tested the 400 grain and then the 600 and the 800, the difference between the 600 and the 800 wasn't nearly as much as the 400 and the 600.
No, it was about 50 feet per second from 400 to 600, and then about 30 from 600 to 800. Mm-hmm. But then it did the opposite in the drop.
Right.
Which is
the difference between the 400 and the 600 was a given distance, and then the distance between the 600 and the 800 was even greater.
Yeah,
which was weird. Like it didn't make a whole lot of sense.
It's weird.
If your heavier arrow is really more effectively storing energy, that shouldn't happen. That drop should be significantly less.
Yeah,
it should still be lower. And mind you, we reset the starting point to where it was fair and equal. So we eliminated any variables you can come up with to say this was fluffy or you're trying to weight it one given way. It's like, no, we literally were as fair as we could. How much does it really drop? Mm-hmm. And it was more than I thought. And then you took it to another little test.
Penetration.
Yeah. And that, I don't even think we should say what that it was. I think they should, just go watch the video for that because you are not going to believe the outcome of that one.
Literally, yeah.
You won't believe it. You'll be like, something's wrong here.
It was very strange.
Something's fake. Josh did something to this to make it come out the way he believes or something.
Yeah.
So
when you guys listen to this, the video's already live, but I'm almost a little nervous to launch the video just because I know there's going to be a lot of reaction.
And the swarm of misspelled hate mail.
Misspelled hate mail. That's the best way to put it. The swarm.
There's going to be some hate. So you can probably figure out what the outcome was.
Yeah. And,
there's just going to be a lot of this is a pointless test. This doesn't prove anything. Probably.
Yeah.
Because the people that believe in that will die on a cross for it. Like full on believe in that. They just do. Like it's 100% locked in their head that anything that contradicts this belief is a lie, is done wrong, is inaccurate, or whatever. That's just how most of them are wired. It's probably how they end up in that really heavy arrow world to begin with.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just very interesting, man. I don't know. I didn't have a dog in the fight. I just thought it'd be fun to shoot some different weights, make it fair. Just kind of saw what we saw, and I just left it feeling very surprised.
Yeah. Oh, I'm gonna get hated on for this one. But the heavy arrow people are only heavy arrow people because Scientology didn't get them first.
Yeah, that one went over my head.
That's a Joe Rogan. Yeah. I stole it. It was hilarious.
Yeah, very interesting though.
It was.
Glad we did it. Glad we took the time to make it as fair as we could be.
Correctly, yeah. Aaron, you asked me about that video the day we did it or the day before we did it? Mm-hmm. Was it the day we did it?
Yeah, I think so.
And you said, well, here's what I want to do. I was like, okay, this is going to take a while. This is not a quick flash in the pan if you're going to do it right. And I believe the thing was, well, you can do it right yourself later. And I'm like, no, you can do it like this, and it'll be fair. Mm-hmm. And you can have a really fair analysis of it. So it didn't take quite as long as I thought it was going to, but it was one of the longer ones to go through and prep and make work. But I think it's a very interesting video. I think there's a lot to be learned from it, and hopefully it means something to people that still have an open mind in that. But there's like if you got like the heavy arrow people and the light arrow people, there's 20% of these on either end that are just this is gospel. It won't matter, but there's still 80% in the middle that might be able to take something away from it that might make you rethink your thought process a little bit.
Well, and there's still don't discount that there's a lot of people that have built an arrow one time and just have always shot that arrow.
Oh no,
Because
there's
they
a ton
got
of
it
that.
from their local pro shop. They sighted in their bow for that arrow. And to be honest,
man.
it's harder to change.
For a long time.
To change arrows, you got to change sight
Oh, yeah.
tapes. You got to redope your bow. You got to retune it. It's not easy to do. So
Yeah. For a long time there, we constantly would have people come in the store that if they discontinued an arrow, it was like life ended. Like, I just want more of these.
just that, I sympathize with
And
that.
like
'Cause
5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years later, they're still coming in for the same thing. I'm like, yeah, they don't make that at all anymore.
that's how I used to feel when I would change arrows, because you get so dialed in, and then I don't know. The more you shoot, the easier it is to redial in. Because it's a big pain in the ass if you're retuning, resighting, re everything. And but the more you do it, the better you get at it, and the more you learn about your equipment, and then you just can help make better decisions around what you've learned and what you've used and what you've had success with and what you've learned from other people. And yeah, it's kind of cool because I feel like we're in a kind of unique situation for a lot of reasons. There's an awesome archery shop down there. You're willing to push the limit and the boundary, and also you're kind of like a truth seeker, right? You don't have an agenda. Your agenda is only, hey, I want to help archers with archery. So there's your agenda.
Yeah. I've always been driven by the what's going to cause me the least amount of problems over time. When you're put into a situation where you're dealing with an immense amount of people with little to no help, you learn really quickly that you need to make sure that what you're recommending or advising people in works correctly and doesn't have problems. Because if it has problems, you have to fix those problems. They're going to come back. So when I'm recommending things to people, it's usually what I think has the greatest chance of success and the least likelihood of failure. That's really what I gravitate to. So that's why I pick what I pick. That's why I recommend what I recommend, and I believe those things make people better. So I will constantly, like, if something changes, if something comes out that revolutionizes or proves to me something different, I will absolutely change. I'm not.
Yeah, you're not married to your
I'm not
ideology.
married to anything. I am happy to be proven wrong, and prove me wrong, and that's great. I'm all for it. I will absolutely recommend something different or go in a different direction. It doesn't happen terribly often that I find that what I've
you're just too
come
far
to a
down the rabbit
conclusion
hole.
for. Well, I've done it so much.
That's
and
what I mean, yeah.
I've experienced it so much, and I've had to deal with things that don't work right. There was a long time there where I wouldn't carry certain products. I just don't carry them because I know I'm going to have problems, and I know I'm going to have to deal with them. So I just won't stock it. And now anymore, we just stock whatever people ask for regardless, because you just can't ignore that, especially in an online marketplace. But, I'm not going to name products, but there are products I carry today that if I didn't have an online store, I would not carry at all. I just wouldn't, because I know I'd have to deal with that problem face to face. Whereas if it's, something shipped out and whatnot,
Well,
and
the difference, though,
6
is-
months later, something's wrong with it or it doesn't work right, or a year later, you're dealing with the manufacturer, you're not dealing with the guy who sold it to you. Whereas when you're face to face, you get a problem with something a year from now, you walk back into the store and put it in my face.
Well, and the difference, though, is when someone's shopping online, they're shopping at their taste.
That's right.
If they walked into your store,
Yeah, they're making their own decision, not me.
If they're walking into your store, they may be shopping at their taste, but often they're like, they want your help. Hey, what would you recommend? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? And then, you're kind of putting your stamp of approval on it. And I guess in a way you're putting a certain stamp of approval on it by carrying it as a vendor. But a person shopping at their choice, right? They're looking for what they want or they think is right. And
Yeah, nine times out of 10, somebody ends up on your website not because they're looking for your website. They're looking for a product that's on your website, and it's how they gravitate to you.
that's true too, yeah.
Right, so it's not like
So a certain part of that's
it's
client
not like
acquisition.
it's not like your influence is the reason that they bought it. In the majority of the time, sometimes it is, but in general, it's not. So you kind of gotta offer what people ask for, which please message me if there's products we don't carry that you want. I will carry whatever people want. And I try really hard to do that. We're getting to a point I think I have most things that people want.
Yeah. What I was going to say earlier was we're kind of in a unique situation where, we have that sweet archery shop. You're willing to test. I'm willing to film whatever. You're willing to film whatever. So on that note, is like, if you guys have any wild ideas, let us know, because we can pursue wild ideas. Yeah. And I think that's kind of cool. And to me, that's kind of exciting. I don't really want to redo the same shit that's been done on the internet. It's not exciting to me, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's always good to break new ground and play with new stuff. And honestly, at the end of the day, we're literally playing with things. That's really what we're doing. And it's definitely not a bad place to be. It's pretty enjoyable. It's pretty fun, and I'm glad that I've gotten to this point in my life that's more of a focus of my life. But still, at the end of the day, I want to make the biggest impact I can on the most amount of people and improve them as greatly as possible. And everything that we do evolves. You know, yeah, we still review products all the time and whatnot, and we change how we review them. We change what we're looking at. We just released yesterday our first 2024 hunting bow review and changed how we review bows. We added a whole bunch of different things, actually gave numerical categories, measured tangible things and gave them a rank, tested with multiple weights of arrows, not just one weight of arrow, and measured physical draw lengths. You know, we take the feedback that we get from people and we use it. And I've always asked in my videos, if there's something I'm not measuring or something I'm not checking or whatever you think I need to, please tell me. And that feedback is why I've made the changes I've made. So your input helps us. It does. You know, we'll get bad input, we'll get good input. It's all stuff out there, but we want input from you. We want ideas from you. We want things that you want to see that we haven't done. That's relevant and important, and we appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I'm thinking about when I initially set up that 36, I was thinking hybrid concept. I'm going to hunt with that bow. I'm going to shoot target with that bow.
Yeah.
And I really got to a point and I was like, I can hunt with it. I can hunt certain situations with it, but it probably makes more sense to pack something around that's a little smaller.
Mm-hmm.
It's the reason they make target bows and they make hunting bows.
Mm-hmm.
When you try to do a little bit of both, one's going to pull from the other in some direction.
That's right.
And sounds like a good idea. It might be a good idea, but do you think it makes sense for me to go to like the full long dong?
Like a longer version of the same bow?
Yeah.
Everyone's different on what they prefer on overall size dimension.
Okay.
So you might like it better, you might not. I've got guys that are your size that shoot indoor religiously and don't use the longer bow. They like
really?
the shorter bow. And some of that's going to be based off of what cam's on it, if they offer different cams and where those cams peak at and what the wheelbases peak at, how they feel at your cycle. There's not necessarily a need to go longer. I went with the longer bow last year because of where the cam cycle ended. So on a 36, it ends at 29 and a half. And my draw length's longer than that.
Yeah, your host.
So I would have had to go to the big wheelbase, and the big wheelbase would have been a lot slower at my length. So the longer bow had the middle wheelbase on it still that went to like 30 and a half. So I could shoot that bow at my draw length and still use the medium-sized cam near the end of its rotation, which is usually where I try to buy a cam system at. If they have multiple sizes or things of that nature, I usually try to run it towards the end of its overall length, but not all the way at the end of it. If you run a bow maxed out for length, it will traditionally be finicky. It'll traditionally be hard to keep tuned, and it'll traditionally feel really aggressive, so not as enjoyable or pleasing to shoot, a little harder in and out of the valley, typically. So ideally, a half inch to an inch of cycle left in its length is where I would usually choose to prefer to run a bow at.
That's a pro tip, because I was just thinking about that the other day. Is like, why don't you run it to the end? Or if you're kind of in that middle ground where you can run one cam and be maxed out, or you can run the other cam and be at the bottom of it.
I know for years and years of trying to tune bows and keep bows tuned, that the bows that are the most finicky, that seem to be the hardest to stay tuned or the hardest to get tuned, are usually maxed out. They're usually at the far end of the adjustment range, if it has an adjustment range.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, so I tend to try to avoid that. Just as a personal preference. However, in hunting bows, that can get difficult because what my draw length is a lot of times is where a bow maxes. And I don't want to get too big of a bow to hunt with in most instances. So it's trying to find a happy medium. So what's good for one person isn't necessarily good for the next, which is why we have different sizes of things. You may really like that 36 a lot more than the 39. You just might, assuming you stick with Bowtech in general. Not to say you can't just try something else or shoot something else. But there's a reason why they make different lengths of bows. And almost every target bow maker that's serious about it makes two, at least. They'll make at least two different lengths to try to cover someone's most common sizes and spectrums and comfort levels.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm basically at the stage of season and life that I want to spend some time getting in like a load of arrows and just I really want to push it this off season. If you want to get good at something, at some point you got to put in a lot of reps. And this year I've definitely put in the most reps, but over the winter I want to push it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to be fun. It's going to be exciting. I told Michael the other day that I can start to see light at the end of the tunnel. Like my arrow's starting to go where I'm looking more often,
Mm-hmm.
And you can start to feel it when it's missing, when it's breaking off. And yeah, I'm starting to feel where my shots are going. And
yeah, when you can know where it is when it goes off, like that's a 4 o'clock 9, right? You've really, I'm not gonna say you've mastered it, but you've gotten really close to truly understanding how to shoot a bow. Mm-hmm. When I miss, I can tell you where I missed. Like before the arrow gets there, I went, oh crap, I know where that is, and I'm usually pretty damn close to exactly where it is. And that comes with enough reps and enough time and enough repetition. And then it's just a matter of being able to keep your focus in it. If you can do that, like if you know when it goes off exactly where it went, your only real hurdle left is stamina and keeping your brain in it the whole way. When you miss like that, it's usually because your brain left.
Yeah, I'm not there yet, but I can tell, that's going high, that's going low, that's going left, that's going right. Maybe not exactly how much, but, I got a pretty good idea. Yeah.
Now, the question you need to ask yourself is, did you know it was going low because you looked low when it went off?
It's a good question.
The answer to that question is probably yes.
Yeah.
If you can keep your focus in the middle of the target, it usually goes in the middle of the target.
Yeah, and I've kind of rounded the corner recently on being able to have a better focus on the shot cycle. It's been fun. And it's crazy how often the arrow does end up there when your focus is there,
Yeah, there'll be a lot of times where you don't think it should have ended up there.
Yeah.
And it
I know,
ended
it's
up
weird.
there, and you're like, what?
But
you know you stayed focused on the middle.
It's like, Joe will say something like, just shake it in the middle. Even if your float's around, just look in the middle. It'll go in the middle. He's got like some Star Wars, use the Force kind of belief that if you're looking in the middle, it goes in the middle. And
He's very right. He's very right.
I know, it's crazy that even if your float is a lot,
Yeah.
but you do keep your gaze on the middle.
Mentally, I discovered that when I took all aiming out of the lens, like I just shot a 10 power lens with nothing in it.
Yeah.
And you couldn't aim, you didn't have something to aim with. Just look at the target.
Yeah.
And it just blew my mind how much it pounded the middle of the target. It was just like, this is just stupid. I don't even have something to aim with. It's just going right in the middle. It's like, but my focus stayed on the middle. It was very easy mentally because I wasn't thinking about this thing that's supposed to be in the middle that isn't. Just look at the target. Just stare at the middle.
I do that sometimes when my light turns off. I force myself to shoot through it, and I just look at the center of the target and trust it. You can still see a little bit of fiber there, but it's certainly not very well defined.
Yeah, it's probably not pounding into your head as much as it would.
Yeah.
But yeah, just being able to keep your focus in the middle is everything. And that's hard to do. It really is. You have to make yourself focus on it and stay on it. And you have to be very cognizant when your thought process leaves it. Like that's the difference. See a guy let down, hopefully he's just simply realizing his thought process didn't stay where it was supposed to. Or he's just getting too shaky. Like he's fatigued. One of the two.
And I think, mentally, it is a little easier if you can check in and check out. Where basically when you step up to that arrow, you check in, you shoot that arrow, and then you can check out until the next one. Because you can't just have that grinding focus the whole time.
No, and that's really the difference between good archers and great archers. A great archer can step up, focus, boom, turn around, have a good time.
Yeah, bust balls and crack jokes.
Yeah, you can turn it on and turn it off.
Yeah.
There's a time to keep the focus and there's a time to not. And I've tried both ways. But the best I ever shot, I want to say I listened to music as soon as I walked off the line. I didn't socialize. I didn't interact. I didn't nothing. I just tried to stay in my focus and not ever leave it. And it did really well, but it's very hard to duplicate. You're going to get distracted. I was always subjected with that anytime I'd shoot league at the shop because the phone would ring. And my brain is programmed to go get the phone. Mm-hmm. Like, oh man, that was so hard. I'd hear conversations behind me about stuff, and I'd come up full draw, and I'd shoot, and I'd turn around and answer the question to the conversation. Like I was my brain was totally back there, but I was still shooting. It's like, you can't do that.
No.
You have to be able to block it all out. What's the Costner phrase? Clear the mechanism for the love of the game. When you're just sitting out there trying to pitch and trying to focus and make everything else just go away. You kind of have to do that.
I see a lot of parallels in other sports.
Yeah, you've got to.
And I'm not there yet, so I can't speak specifically to archery, but the thing is, to get to that point, there's so much work. There's so much conscious work to get to that point. A lot of people are like, "Well, I just want to turn my brain off and shoot." And it's like, yeah, but if you're turning your brain off, you're not doing the work, and you gotta do a lot of work to get to that point where you can kind of go into that flow state or whatever. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's very fickle too, right? Like that's why
I want to be there right now.
That's why you see people are streaky.
I feel myself just zoning a little bit.
Yeah,
it's weird.
And but that's why you see people who are also streaky in sports is like you can, you dip in and dip out of that high performance level. It's hard to be there all the time. And that's why it's so impressive when people can show up consistently and do that. Mm-hmm. Like Bodie, what was his last year was freaking amazing, dude. He showed up at Vegas, Lancaster, Reading. Mm-hmm. Anything else?
I know he went to several others.
Those are big ass tournaments.
They're the biggest tournaments you can go to, really. Yeah, and it's always a challenge. Normally, you'll see somebody that like dominate the sport. They'll dominate it for 3-4 years, and then they can't ever get it back. And I'm not sure why that is. It seems like everyone's got a shelf life.
Yeah,
and hopefully Bodie's, because he's so young, he might.
Levi's had a long shelf life.
Yeah, but I want to say I think he's I'm going to say he's had issues at certain points. He's never been great at dots, right?
I think part of his competitive advantage is he's gotten so good at unknown that's, maybe executionally the best shooters are going to shoot the best at Vegas, right? Mm-hmm. And that it's one of the most challenging, like all the best shooters in the world to be at Vegas. That's for a reason. It's freaking tough. And, but executionally, if you're maybe have a little more wavering, but you're shooting unknown distance, you can make up for a lot of that by just making really good decisions and knowing your yardages.
Yeah, it used to be back in the day that the best archers were the best yardage judges because it was unknown distance, and that always covered up. You didn't have to be the best shot. You just had to be the best at being able to pick the right spot on
make
the target.
Really good decisions too.
And make good decisions and be able to tell how far away stuff is.
Yeah.
And you take that same dude and put him into a dot tournament, and he's might struggle a bit more because it's a harder discipline. They're different disciplines. They're not the same thing. It's a good analogy for that.
Well, that's why it's so hard to be good at.
It's like almost like a long drive tournament versus a golf tournament. They're not the same thing. They're both hitting golf balls. It doesn't make them the same thing. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to distinguish who's the best archer, etc. I definitely think Levi's dominated certain aspects of it for a very long time.
Oh, he's the GOAT of my lifetime,
Randy Ulmer was pretty dominant for a pretty long time before.
Indoor too?
Randy did indoor too. Yeah.
I know Randy's I know a little bit about his hunting history. He's lights
crazy.
Out hunter, right?
Oh yeah, dude, he's a diehard mule deer. He's really into mule
That's
deer,
what
but
I
he hunt bulls and whatnot.
Yeah.
But he was big into mule deer, like that was his thing. But Randy dominated 3D archery, like IBO archery, for a long time. When IBO was the discipline, I don't even know if ASA existed back then. And Randy was really good, really really good. And I want to say he did target too, but I just remember it was really, really dominant for a long period of time. Still a really good archer, but after a while, I think guys just hang it up a little bit. It's hard. I remember Dudley talking about how you get to a certain age and it's really hard to the grind for what it takes to do that is just hard to stay into because you start getting pulled in a whole bunch of different directions. And it's a testament to Levi that he's been able to be as good as he has as long as he has because he's also been pulled in a whole bunch of different directions.
Do you know how old Levi is?
I do not.
So Levi's been doing the podcast circuit lately, which has been cool. I've listened to all of them because I think we have a mutual friend, Cage Golden. Cage came up to the Alaska hunt with us a couple years ago, and Cage just ended up being like a good, just like a kind of good guy, good friend, you know. And Cage did some filming for Levi. Cage was always like, yeah, Levi is awesome. He's busting balls in the field. He's having fun, but he's so good at what he does and he works so hard at it. So immediately hearing that from Cage, I was like kind of like a Levi, big fan of him, even hadn't met him. But I've been listening to all of his podcasts, and it's just really cool to listen to someone who's dominated a sport for so long, and he's really humble, and you know, mentally he's kind of talked a lot about his process, and there's just a lot of parallels I see with other sports and high performers, and yeah, it's been cool to hear him open up on these more public forums because when you're doing TV, you don't really get to see what's behind the book very much, you know.
Sure.
You kind of get to see the cover of the book, maybe a few pages, but it's not long form.
It's the Cliff Notes.
Yeah, it's the Cliff Notes version.
Yeah.
So it's been cool to see him do a few podcasts and just hear what he has to say, man. I'm just more impressed with him the more I've heard from him.
Yeah, I remember him telling the story. I don't remember where I heard it from, but I remember him telling the story of how he was almost given up on archery.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it was his last tournament, and he actually did give up. He told his dad, he's like, "I'm done. That's it. I can't afford to go." And his dad paid for that last entry, and he won that tournament, and he got sponsored after that.
Yeah, and I think that was like the Worlds or something. Like
Something
he won
like that.
Worlds, and he won a lot of money, and it was like all of a sudden it was something he could do.
All of a sudden it was feasible, but he had given up. Like he was, and not because he didn't have the ability, he just couldn't afford it. Because it costs a lot to try to get there. You know,
Yeah.
you're gonna
In any sport, when you go to travel's expensive.
travel's a lot. Entry fees start to get a lot.
Yeah.
When you're shooting in pro, you're paying a lot more to
Gas, hotel
participate.
rooms, like
Yeah.
life on the road is freaking expensive.
And winning doesn't really pay that much when you start thinking about how many tournaments you got to go to. You know, if you win every fifth tournament, it pays eh. If you win every third tournament, it's paying pretty decent. But there's a lot that goes into that stuff. Now they start talking about sponsorships, and then sponsors start paying your entry fees and things like that, and your travel. Now it's pretty easy street, but you got to get there. You got to be good enough to actually be that successful to get there. And it still isn't that much. I mean, what a professional archer makes compared to, like, what Levi probably makes a year would be a shit salary in the NFL, right? Because we're talking about professionals, athletes doing something for a living. And I would guarantee he puts more time. Maybe not over a quarterback or something, but also you look at like even a crap salary quarterback's probably making $5-10 million a year, right? I mean, the commitment required at the ability of skill, the compensation isn't adequate. Even though people are like, well, you're making blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, but that's crap compared to any other professional sport.
So say you're the best in the world,
Yeah.
you know, the best in the world across so many other sports. I mean, they're making a lot of money.
And Aaron Rodgers making $50 million.
Mucho bucks,
$50 million a year. LeBron James makes 45 or something like that.
That's before endorsements.
And that's just their salary. That's not sponsorship dollars or anything like that. That's their salary that the team pays them.
And they don't have
to
to win to
team.
get paid, right?
Nope. No, but you're not going to get paid again if you don't win.
Yeah,
There's that.
I know, yeah. And you get paid more in bonuses and shit, but
There's incentives and those sort of things. And obviously when you win, the endorsements are higher and things like that. But yeah, it's a joke in comparison. And any professional sport, even golf, good analogy. If you can
first billionaire athlete was a golfer.
Yeah. Well, even if you can make the tour, you still get paid a decent amount of money participating, don't you?
It's crazy. A few times with clients, I've had like looked up previous career winnings for people that you wouldn't have heard of, people that were just like around the tour, not winning stuff, and it's amazing. If you're surviving out there, you're making a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a career, just like a second string, a third string quarterback. It's a career. It's a legit career. Like, I don't even remember what the veteran minimum is in the NFL, but I think it's close to $1 million for a guy that doesn't play a year. Right, but I think their average career is like 3 years or 4 years.
Who do you root for in the NFL?
Well, I've always been a Seahawks fan because that was the closest to us, and I do tend to go that route. I was a big Peyton Manning fan, really big Peyton Manning fan. Hated Tom Brady with a passion.
Really?
Yeah, because he kicked Peyton Manning out so many different years. And I always struggle with the success and the accolades that he got early on because his numbers didn't support it. He always had a really good defense. Like every year that the Patriots won the Super Bowl, they had top 10 defense. The Colts never did, ever. Like Peyton Manning won a Super Bowl with a 25th ranked defense.
I just read something the other day that Belichick's winning percentage lifetime without Brady is like under 50%.
Yeah, it is.
That's fucking balling, dude.
You didn't let me finish. So after, I think it was his fourth or his fifth Super Bowl, I just gave up. I said, all right, he's the greatest quarterback there lived. Fine. I give up because I always made the argument for Peyton just because I like Peyton. Peyton had leadership skills that some of them don't have. Peyton took ownership of the loss regardless of whose fault it was, and Peyton always shook the other guy's hand and never left the field throwing a fit. And that's the thing that got me the most about Brady. There are multiple times Brady did not go shake the other guy's hand, multiple times that he left the field throwing a fit. It's like, I understand you're competitive as hell. I understand you want to win more than anything. But sportsmanship requires you to go and shake that person's hand and tell them good game. And out of all, and the media never massacred him for it. And I never understood that.
I wasn't even aware of it.
Oh, dude, there's multiple times. And as much as I've made the argument for like LeBron James possibly being better than Michael Jordan, he frequently does that, and it drives me batty. Like if they lose, he will frequently walk off the court. I'm like, that's shit sportsmanship. As much as I hate losing, and I'm using the word hate here, I hate to lose. I will always go shake the other person's hand and congratulate them, as painful as it is, because they deserve that, because they beat you. And you want to take that moment and how bad it hurts and how painful it is and look the other guy in the face and remember it, because you're going to work harder for it.
Yeah, that's important, man.
Yeah.
It's important.
Failure, you learn so much more from failure than success.
That's true.
You learn so much more drive. You fuel yourself so much more by failure. And you shouldn't run away from it. As much as your inkling is to run away from it, embrace it, deal with it, and face it, because you will learn from it. And it will fuel you.
Yeah. But here's what I know about Tom Brady is he went to Michigan. So I'm a Michigan fan.
Tom Brady didn't hardly play in high school.
He hardly played in Michigan.
He wasn't
that good. He wasn't that good. He wasn't a Heisman contender.
No, he was not. But there's an interesting story to his senior year.
Yeah. I
don't know if you followed it or not. But they had brought in a freshman that was a dual sport athlete.
Do you remember his name?
I do not.
Okay.
But they brought in a freshman that was I think he was baseball and football, if I remember right. And he was this phenom, and they brought him in on the premise that he was going to play, right? And they'd put him in, and he'd start, and they'd get way behind, and they'd eventually yank him and put Tom in there, and Tom would come in and find a way to win the game. It happened a lot. So he got put in the fire. He was always considered not good enough, like the whole way up, and that drive that pushed you to become who you were. So you may not have to be the best naturally gifted person. You just have to outwork everybody else and be relentless in that task.
Yeah.
He does have an interesting story, and I have sensed, other than the poor sportsmanship traits that he's shown, I don't think anybody's ever been more driven. or worked harder or sacrificed more
Yeah.
to get to that point. The Brock Purdy thing's pretty interesting. That he's the quarterback of the 49ers. It's his second year. He's the last guy in the draft. And he's lighting up the show. Like wild. Just to see a guy. I mean, I guess you had Tony Romo who went undrafted, right? And did pretty good as a quarterback.
Yeah, just okay, he did all right.
For a guy who wasn't drafted, he did pretty damn good.
Yeah, but relative to other quarterbacks, he was just all right.
But he was a mid-level quarterback. Is that fair?
Yeah.
He was a mid-level quarterback for a very popular team that had a lot of focus, right? But Brock Purdy I'm trying to remember. He hasn't lost in the regular season. He hasn't lost a game in the regular season. Going back to last year.
Well, yeah, where I was going with all this
It's wild.
is you root for the Seahawks. I root for the Lions.
Yeah.
Seahawks got to win against the Lions.
Yeah, how'd that hurt?
But no.
Didn't we watch part of that game?
Yeah,
actually,
the Lions
you
look
left at halftime or
fucking
something?
good this year, dude. And
Dude, I love their coach.
And their coach is amazing.
I love
Did
their
you see
coach.
that quote he put about getting ready for primetime games? I got to read it to you. Let me look it up, yeah. But talk about that game for a second.
Honestly, I don't remember too much of it. I know it was relatively close early on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do really like the Lions. Like if the Lions win at all, I would be very happy. Because that's a anytime you have a team that's struggled for success for an incredibly long time, you kind of got to root for them. Like the Milwaukee Bucks winning the championship a couple years ago, you had to root for Milwaukee. God, it'd been forever since the Milwaukee team won, if I remember right. But and the Detroit Lions have gone through so much failure for so long. It's so not fair. It's kind of like being a Bears fan these days.
It's been tough, dude. It's been brutal.
Yeah, and both those teams are in the same division. That's just so painful.
All right, listen to this. Dan Campbell.
Yeah, Dan Campbell.
Pre-game routine for primetime games. I start the day with 11 raw ostrich eggs. The ostrich is a living velociraptor, and my body runs better with prehistoric alpha predator protein. That's just
11?
science. Then I knock out a quick workout. All glamour muscles. This isn't for function. This is for intimidation. When my biceps are blazing and my body is hopped up on dino protein, I make sweet love to Mrs. Campbell with a photo of the opposing team's coach taped on the bedstand and Steven Seagal's movies playing on full blast. My theory behind that is, if I can finish while looking at you, I can beat you. Again, science.
If I can finish while looking at you, I can beat you. God, I just like him even more.
Yeah.
I already liked him a lot.
That
Holy
made me
shit.
a Dan Campbell super fan.
Dude, he's a stud.
I knew some about him, but when I read that, I was like, he's a good leader and he's got a sense of humor.
He's
like
a guy that still wants to be a player. That's
He's
a
like
coach.
my kind of dude.
He's a cool dude. Like just, I don't know. I would like to think that any player that plays for him is playing for him, not because he's their coach.
Yeah.
He's very relatable.
And I guess I see that with really good leaders is they have a balance between being able to lead, but also create a culture where people are like fun and want to be around him.
Yep.
You know, and Jocko's a good example of this. Is like at a glance, Jocko seems a little like dry and serious. But the more you listen to him, it's like the dude has a sense of humor.
Yeah.
He's funny. He's a kind of a crack up.
Yep.
And yeah, man, it's just it's cool to see, work hard but also be able to create a fun environment. And makes a lot of sense because then people want to be around you,
Ironically, that's how I've tried to run my business is to we're going to work hard, but we're going to have a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. And it seems to work. Like the guys tend to want to work for you and will feel like they're working with you instead of for you.
Yeah. And when you start to get across like broader organizations, I mean, the whole culture thing is really freaking important.
Oh yeah.
And culture does come from the top down.
It does. It does. You have to lead by example.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, and if you can bust balls and like have fun and still get your job done, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I see that now down at the shop. Like those guys have fun, you know. They're
Trying
I
really
really
hard.
That's a really cool little group of people that are working down there. I mean, since I've been around, I think these guys are probably having the most fun that I can remember.
It's up there for sure. I like to think we've always pretty much had a good time, but you know, when we were short staffed, it was hard to have a good time.
Yeah.
It was because there was just too much to do and everyone's overwhelmed and it's hard to enjoy it as much. But since we've had adequate staff, it's always a good time.
It probably helps that Justin kind of shares my sense of humor too.
Yeah, you guys are both odd ducks.
Yeah.
Works good.
We are, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you do have a similar sense of humor, that's for
Yeah.
sure.
That's cool.
Yeah. But it's definitely fun. It's hard to argue with being able to go to work every day and laugh and screw around and spend time with your friends that feel like your family. You know, it's a good time. Almost every person that's worked for me, or at least well over half of them, have been a friend of mine before they ever worked there, especially the ones that have lasted the longest. And then you get some pleasant ones that just wanted a job, and you get to develop good friendships with them and, you know, grow to care about them a lot. And it's funny to watch their what they think they can say to you evolve. Right? And at first they're all reserved and quiet, and then Daniel said something to me today that I was like, damn, boy, way to go. Like, get after it. You're not afraid anymore. At first, they're always so afraid to say anything to you, or, you know, say like a snappy little comment back to you, whatnot, when you're screwing around. And it's funny.
It's a sign of trust, right?
Yeah, no one pushed the limit farther than Nolan. Ever. Like, Nolan would say shit to me that the guys would look like, oh my God.
Well, I've seen Nolan say stuff. I'm like, dude,
Yeah.
you'd be canceled, man.
Oh man, yeah. Nolan's
Careful what you say
Nolan
there.
is a hell of an authentic human being.
Yeah.
I love that guy. He just always make me laugh. Nobody can make me laugh quite as good as Nolan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, man, I think that's the pod.
Pod it up.
Yeah.
Well done.
Curious what people thought about this. We, you know, broadened our talk a little bit. Football.
I think it was more of a personal conversation and not so focused on something. We threw some stuff in there that was relevant and current, but just a good old conversation.
Yeah. Let us know what you thought. We got a camcorder over here staring at us, and I'm excited to see
Tim
Josh
wants to make
use.
home movies.
Yeah. I don't know. I've been on a camcorder kick lately, and it's going to be cool to see it get used.
Somebody had to buy one to play with, so
Yeah.
I did.
Anyway, that's the pod. It's hunting season. Hunt hard wherever you're at, and hunt every day like it's your last. And yeah, we'll catch you back for the next one.
Enjoy those moments, folks.